If you're a business that sells any type of product, service, consulting, or does contracts with clients, how many more sales could you get if you could offer a warranty of the results of your product or service to the client offered by a third party, so that the client doesn't have to depend only on your word? This may come in handy, especially for a new customer or new client you're pitching a contract for. Well, how can you do this? How can you get somebody else to back up your words? Because look, if it's your salesperson promising your customer that the results of their $50,000 contract, $100,000 contract, $1 million contract are going to be good or quality results, your client just has to take your word for it. But there's a way to introduce a third party, a financial backing of your word, in order to get the client to feel more comfortable about doing business with you, especially the first time. Maybe it's a new client you've not done a deal with before, done a contract with before. So how can you do this? Well, in some industries, this is done all the time through what's called a surety bond. You've heard the statement, licensed, bonded, and insured. Many customers will look for that credential in certain industries, maybe insurance companies, maybe an accountant, maybe fiduciaries. In some industries, it's required that you have a surety bond. For some types of contracts, for building contracts, let's say building a bridge, you have to put up a performance bond for the municipality, government agency that you're performing the work for. But how can you use this in other industries? Let's say you are a tech company that's doing a new website, a new app for a client, and it's a $50,000 contract. What if you are a consulting company that's going to provide sales support over the course of a year? And if your client is worried about the fact that you're going to come through on your contract, you're going to be there on your contract, offering a surety bond, a performance bond for that client may be the difference between them just having to take your word for it and adjusting their purchase accordingly, versus having a third-party financial backer that says, look, if anything goes wrong with this project, here's a surety bond that will make you whole. Now, we're not attorneys, we're not giving you legal advice, and even though we're a surety company, we're not presenting specific terms and conditions of a surety bond in this video. This is designed to give you an idea of what you might be able to use a bond for. Every bond is different. Make sure you understand the terms of the one that you use for your business development. But the point of the video is, even if your customer doesn't request one or require one, you as a successful, growing, ambitious business that wants to get more customers might be able to use the surety bond product or the surety bond power to get your customer to go with you versus a competitor. Because if you're in an industry where a surety bond is not required for a contract, none of your other competitors are going to offer this. So let's say you're bidding on a large tech project that you know a company needs a bunch of new servers and new network and hardware devices, and it's going to be $150,000, $200,000 project. And you know every other provider, they're going to bid on the job. The rates might be about the same. Some is going to be a little higher, some is going to be a little lower. And your customer might just go with the lowest bid if all things are equal between them. What are the chances you're going to be the lowest bid if there's 5 bidders? Well, pure odds just give you 20% chance of getting that bid. In fact, do you even want to be the lowest bidder on a job? Because all it takes is one of the 5 bidders to either make a mistake and bid too low, or just because they're so desperate that they want to keep the lights on that they're going to bid under what it costs to actually provide the service. So chances of being the lowest bidder are slim to none. Even if that is the case, you probably don't want to be the lowest bidder. We have other videos we talk about why you never want to be the lowest bidder on a project. It's never a good thing. So how can you offer something of more value to the client that they'll go with your proposal versus a competitor? Well, if you include a surety bond with that proposal that guarantees that if you don't show up, you don't follow through, you don't finish, that a surety bond company underwritten by, major insurance underwriter, sometimes Lloyd's of London writes these surety bonds, will provide recourse so that the project gets finished, or if there's defects, it'll take care of it, or whatever the terms of the bond are. And that's the good thing about a surety bond. It can be written with whatever terms and conditions you and the bonding company agree to, and you can do it to benefit your client. You also don't have to pay for anything in advance of actually getting the contract. You can go to your bonding agency that you deal with and explain to them what type of proposal you're putting together with your client. They can tell you what they're able to write a bond for and what they're not able to write a bond for. There's certain things in the contract that they can't cover, but they might be able to say, yeah, if you fail to complete the project within a certain period of time, we will guarantee the bond amount of the contract to your client. And as long as you get in advance the approval for this type of bond being available and a commitment from the bonding agency, you don't have to buy anything. You can bid on your contract, include this surety bond with your proposal, and if you are the successful bidder and you get the contract, then you can go and purchase the bond. How much is a bond going to cost? Well, in most cases, it's going to add a few $100s to your cost. In most instances with normal risk, a surety bond for, let's say, $50,000 might cost $400. Sure, it takes away from your margin, but you can also factor it into your pricing as well. The important thing to understand about a bond is it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you default on the contract and the bonding agency has to pay, they're going to come after you for whatever they have to pay. So don't look at this strategy if you know you're going to be in breach of the contract, or if you know that you're going to fail in whatever the endeavor is, whatever the contract is. But it's a good secret way to induce a client to go with you versus an alternate source, because most proposals, most bidders, most contracts aren't going to include that. And even though you say, hey, well, we promise we'll fix it, we promise we'll be here, here's our credentials, we've been in business 10 years, they're going to hear that from everybody. They're going to hear some good credentials or salesmanship or bragging about the company from everybody. Everybody has something good to say about their firm. It might be different from yours, but it's all going to sound the same. It's just all going to be noise for that customer. Whatever industries you're a member of, whatever trade organizations you're on the board of, whatever history you have or clients you've had, every bidder is going to have something they can say, like a brag book or a why buy here book or something that shows why you should be considered. So don't think that your magic list of good things about your company is going to be unique to what the potential client is seeing. They're going to see that from everybody in different ways, shapes, or forms. Also, your salesperson is probably going to be good, but presumably the salespeople of the other companies will be good. So it's going to boil down to really two things. The cost certainly has to be in line, but also who they think is going to give them the best success. And by success means maybe a better quality, but also this day and age, many companies have been let down by contracts. They've had vendors who have disappeared, ghosted them halfway through a contract, or it took too long. Something that's supposed to take 3 weeks ends up taking 9 months. Something that had a certain number of features and benefits in the contract ends up having none of those. And part of it's because as a bidder, once you get the deal, once you get the bid, once you get the deposit, it's less of a priority. And many companies at that point now look to a new customer to try to bid on and try to make a priority. It's nature. It's human nature to put your priority on whatever the most current new business is. So clients have seen this before. They've had this pain point in their workflow before. So if you can offer them not only your word, but somebody backing you up with money, now you're in a whole different position. Because now they know that not only are you talking the talk, you're also backing it up with hard money from a third party that's not going anywhere. You know, bonding company can't just disappear. They're licensed fiduciaries. They have funding requirements, capital requirements, and they have to pay. So your client's going to be assured that their needs are going to be met, at least to the extent that's written in the bond. The bond can't cover every detail, certainly, but it can cover in a few important key points, done by a certain date, at least this much in deliverables, maybe X amount of hours of consulting, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to cover much. You can actually write a bond to be very thin in terms of what it's actually backing up. It may not back up the whole contract. It may just back up certain points of it. It's up to you to figure that out. But it's a good sales tool to add without putting a huge amount of money at risk. In terms of some contracts, you might say, well, I'll put escrow money. Well, now you have to tie up your working capital. This way you can do it with a fixed small amount of money. As long as you feel like you are a legitimate provider and you're not going to default, you're fine. You know it, but the customer has to know it. And if you know that you are going to 100% sure fulfill this contract, fulfill this sale, then you have nothing to worry about. Just a few $100s out of your pocket for a surety bond. The only time you have to worry is if you default, because then it's going to be a world of hurt for you, not for the customer. But that's what you're doing. You're shifting the risk from the customer to you. And that's one of the biggest factors that clients use in determining what contract to go with is, what is my level of risk? Not so much as the price and what I'm going to get for it, but what is my risk? What is my risk it's not going to get done? What is my risk it's not going to get done in a certain period of time? And a surety bond can help your client mitigate that risk so that they can go forward with you and sleep at night. Where the other 4 or 5 bids they got, yeah, the price might have been a little bit lower or might have offered maybe a little bit more deliverable in the contract, but the risk is here. Risk is an invisible decision-making factor, but it's huge. It's not on the contract anywhere. It doesn't show up anywhere. You're trying to mitigate risk by saying lots of good things about your company, who the CEO is, what groups you're in, how long you've been in business, blah, blah, blah. That's what it sounds like to the client, blah, blah, blah. How many times have you signed up for a webinar that's kind of a sales pitch type webinar, and for the first 3 minutes they're just talking about how long they've been in business, what they do, what they're good at it, and you're tuned out. What do you care? Right? Everybody says the same thing. Your story is not that much special because everybody has a story as a bidder, somebody giving a pitch. A surety bond can give you an extra powerful factor in your sales proposal that could be the difference between getting a 6-figure contract and it going to the guy down the street because he saved them a couple grand. They're figuring, if I'm going to have risk anyways, I might as well save money. And the customer's not going to think of this because most customers don't know that a surety bond is available. How do we know that? Did you even know this was available before this video? If you didn't know it and you're in the business of doing contracts, What are the chances that the client, potential client, knew about this? Slim to none. So use this to your advantage. Give yourself an extra competitive leg up on all those other lame providers that you hate. You hate thinking about competitors. You hate thinking about XYZ Corp stealing your business. Don't let them. Give your customers something that they can sink their teeth into that makes you more than just hot air coming out of your mouth talking about a bid. You're backing it up with cold hard cash. $50,000 bond. That's something. Cost you a few $100, but to the customer, it's worth $50,000 if something goes wrong. And that's a big, huge, shiny object that they can attach to your contract that makes them put the ink on the line to give you the business rather than somebody else.